But then when you read the Prime Minister's, the readout from the Prime Minister's office afterwards, it does not mention this mandate at all.
Well, it's July 4th. You know what that means. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today we've got Donald Trump coming out and announcing tariffs, lots of tariffs on a lot of countries. Mark Carney has been squandering this opportunity to make a deal. What will Canada get stuck with? We have auto industry executives blasting Mark Carney over his EV mandates, which is going to shrink the auto industry in Canada, not to mention many other markets in our country on the brink of collapse. Let's jump into this. Starting this one off from Table Salt, he's posting here a 16-time surge in college students from India in 2021 report by Stats Canada from 4.2% in 2000 to 66.8% in 2015. We shouldn't really be surprised by this. A lot of students taking advantage of our asylum system, becoming refugees. That's what we're getting here. And they're not really going to school. This needs to be cracked down on. We also got this one here showing recession coming with manufacturing GDP down 1.9%. Overall, Canadian GDP falls 0.1% in April. This is after massive government spending on the federal election. May advance numbers project another drop in May. So we're seeing, yes, once again, the GDP in this country dropping. Next up from Blacklock's reporter, we've got this one. Parks Canada in confidential emails disputed the 215 buried young ones. The story of graves and Kamloops, First Nations, that whole thing. Trudeau went there and paid his respects, as my respects to the graves. Well, it turned out there was no graves and there's no one found. No skeletons, no bodies, no nothing. And not only that, so it says here, managers concluded that the claim was unproven after canvassing historians and archaeologists prior to declaring the school was a National Historic Site. They are very careful about the nature of evidence and the conclusions that can and cannot be drawn at this point. The Tecumlups and Cpac First Nation in 2021 announced its discovery of 215 graves in an orchard. No attempt was ever made to recover any skeletal remains, even though First Nations received $12.1 million in federal funding for fieldwork, exhumation, coroner's analysis, and DNA testing. We gave them $12 million and they did not go looking for what they knew they would find, which is nothing. This is a disgrace. And it also goes on to say here that since then, the government has had zero contact, zero comment on this situation of Trudeau paying his respects, because essentially he paid his respects to empty dirt. Moving ahead, we've got Donald Trump laying an example of what we should be doing in Canada.
To fund improvements and enhanced experiences across the park system. For this anniversary, I've just signed an executive order to raise entrance fees for foreign tourists while keeping prices low for Americans. And we're going to do that. The national parks will be about America first. We're going to take it America first for the national parks. And these are just a few of the many programs.
So they're increasing the national park rates on foreigners like us and in decreasing the price for Americans. This is a great idea. You know what happens in Canada is the government makes it free for refugees and newcomers to go to our national parks. They've done that before. And then they increase the prices for Canadians. It's the exact opposite of what they're doing in America. Imagine if we had a government that actually fought for us just once in our lifetime. It would be nice. Actually, most European countries do this now. Look it up. So yeah, so Canada, not one of the countries doing this. And in comparison, so Mark Carney came out with his Canada Strong Pass, which is very much similar to the America the Beautiful Pass, which is the one you have in America to go to their national parks. This just allows you to visit multiple national parks and save some money. But anyone can buy the Canada Strong Pass. What they're doing here in America is they're going to be reducing the cost for Americans. That's the key difference. There's no reducing the cost for Canadians. Moving ahead here, Donald Trump announcing on July the 4th, he's going to be raising tariffs as high as 70% on some countries.
U.S. President Donald Trump had a self-imposed deadline of July 9th for making trade deals with countries around the world. But with that day approaching quickly and few, if any, real deals coming down the pike, Trump is now saying instead of trying for complicated deals, he is going to simply send letters to countries and tell them what tariffs their goods will face. Tariffs to be collected starting August 1st. Now, to be clear, all indications are that Trump is talking about countries that were targeted on so-called Liberation Day, and Canada was not part of that group. Here is how Trump describes these letters and possible tariff levels.
So these countries are ones that haven't been talking to Trump. They don't have any deals in the works. So Canada, yeah, not a part of this, but this doesn't look good for us. We're getting kicked down the can here. Trump has lost his patience with Canada and Mark Carney negotiating, where these countries are not negotiating. They're just going to get a straight deal.
They'll range in value from maybe 60 or 70% tariffs to 10 and 20% tariffs. We've done the final form, and it's basically going to explain what the countries are going to be paying in tariffs. And it's very important. It's a lot of money for the country, but we're giving them a bargain.
Of course, it's not foreign countries who pay the tariffs. That will fall on U.S. importers and ultimately American consumers. But these tariffs seriously impact countries' access to the U.S. market, as Canada knows well, which is why Canada is hoping for its own deal by July 21st.
Yeah, so the companies will have to pay those tariffs to the government. They'll increase their prices on their own people in America, but then the companies that sell the products abroad will likely see reduced sales. So it hurts both sides, but it generates revenue for the American government.
Now, the U.S. ambassador to Canada thinks that's a realistic deadline, at least for a framework of a deal. And he says he's confident neither country's leader will make a bad deal for their people.
So I think when we get to a trade agreement, I think Canadians are going to be able to look at it and say, wow, this is going to be good for us. This is going to be good for our citizens. This is going to be good for our economy. And Americans are going to look at it the same way. You've got two tough negotiators here. You've got the Prime Minister and you've got the President of the United States. And neither one of them is going to walk away and when we get an agreement thinking that they got a lousy deal. They're both going to say there's wins in here for Canada, there's wins in here for the United States. It's a good deal for both of us.
This is interesting. The ambassador to America here thinks we are going to get a deal. He seems confident in it. The question is, how good is the deal? Because obviously they're going to get the best deal possible for America. Will Canada get a good deal?
Prime Minister Mark Carney said on Canada Day that he will only sign a deal that's in the best interests of Canada and Canadians. But that leaves a lot up to interpretation, as a former foreign affairs minister is noting.
Who chooses the best interest? He said, okay.
Yeah, so we saw this morning. So Mark Carney saying that he's going to get the best deal possible, and if it's not there, it's not there. And as this guy's mentioning, Lloyd Axworthy, who decides that? Well, is it Mark Carney? It doesn't seem to be Parliament, because Parliament's not sitting anymore. Why is Mark Carney in a crisis not having Parliament sit? Something stinks, and it's coming from the Prime Minister's office.
But is the only arbiter of what's in the best interest of Canada?
Even if Canada is not on the list of Trump's tariff letters that he wants to send out, Trump's latest salvo reinforces two challenges for Canadian negotiators. Trump believes in tariffs, while Canada wants them gone. And Trump does not like complicated solutions. And yet Trump himself said when he was in Canada for the G7 that Carney's ideas for a trade deal are complex.
He did say that. He did say he has good ideas, but they're a little different. They're more complex. Donald Trump is not going to cave to Carney, so Carney has to come up with a creative solution that gets Trump to sign the deal. Unfortunately, I think Carney's going to be doing whatever's in his best interest in Brookfield and not for Canada. Meanwhile, we have Canadian exports to the U.S. nearing lowest levels ever.
Numbers from Statistics Canada show Canadian exports to the United States are nearing the lowest ever. Exports to other countries, though, have reached record highs.
What we're seeing in the numbers is somewhat encouraging. I mean, that, exporters, Canadian companies are taking that spare capacity that the United States created or the empty space on the order books and are able to, in some cases, fill it with other markets.
Data shows a drop in exports south for the fourth straight month. Imports from the United States are also down for the third month in a row. Canada's overall trade deficit narrowed slightly to $5.9 billion, down from a record $7.6 billion in April. Experts say this is a direct result of Canada's efforts to diversify international trade relationships.
This is an absolute mess. A lot of people losing their jobs. This needs to be sorted out immediately. One thing to say that we will replace American markets, but it's a great accomplishment to actually make it happen. Proud to be Canadian. I mean, it just comes down to talk and action. How much action is there? The only nation building big projects we have on the docket right now went to China and building those new ferries. Epic failure of the Canadian government. We have to work with America. They needed to make a better deal. They needed to offer a better deal straight up. They could have avoided all of this. Way to go, Liberal voters. You played yourself. Isn't that the truth? Next up, we got CBC Watcher with this one. Mark Carney met with auto industry leaders and they gave it to him straight. Here we have word coming from the meeting that Mark Carney's team didn't document the meeting as it really happened. So first off, they have some of them here. We'll just take a look at this. Auto industry leaders showing up to the meeting.
Just here to talk about the importance of the auto sector and ensuring its continuing success.
Is the EV rebate to debt? Is the EV mandate debt?
We'll be discussing EV mandates, of course, as well as a range of other policies to make sure the sector succeeds.
Do you think that's sustainable, though?
Well, the EV mandate itself is not sustainable. The targets that have been established cannot be met, and that will be part of the discussion.
What will you be asking the Prime Minister for?
I'll talk to you when I get out.
Yeah, so what really happened? It's not good for Carney. He's losing again.
What I can't tell you, though, about what he said heading into the meeting is that he did also emphasize that he wants to see the Prime Minister rescind the zero emission mandate that's in place. He called this unsustainable and says that the targets that have been established cannot be met. So there was a lot of passion heading into this meeting, even maybe a tinge of anger about this mandate. But then when you read the Prime Minister's, the readout from the Prime Minister's office afterwards, it does not mention this mandate at all. Instead, what it does is it focuses on how the Prime Minister spoke to the auto manufacturers about the work that Mark Carney is doing to advance trade talks with the U.S. to try to get this new trade deal by July 21st. And we have also heard that the Prime Minister did tell the automakers that he is prepared to impose countermeasures if he can't get this new deal by July 21st, retaliatory measures that would match the state of negotiations at that time. But as for more support for auto workers, that wasn't announced today, and neither were any future talks with auto manufacturers who weren't in the meeting, such as Toyota or Honda.
The details of the meeting not documented properly. It's almost like Mark Carney just dismissed the entire meeting. He doesn't want to talk about it at all. So this is another problem in Canada that is blowing up, and you've got auto industry leaders who are completely pissed off with it.
Has been facing a lot of pressure to rescind this mandate from the Conservatives in the House of Commons. We heard a lot about that during the spring sitting, and also now with the U.S., with the fact that that country is close to passing U.S. President Donald Trump's so-called big, beautiful budget bill, which would phase out electric vehicle tax credits from the Biden era. So many people in the auto sector say if that happens, it just won't be sustainable to keep this electric vehicle, this zero emissions mandate in place here in Canada, especially given the fact that our industries are so intertwined, so dependent on each other. So they really want to see this rescinded as soon as possible. Of course, there's going to be pushback from environmentalists, even maybe from some Canadians who don't want Canada to follow in the same steps as the U.S.
What's interesting is Elon Musk came out and said he wants those EV rebates gone because he said it would increase the value of Tesla. He wants them gone. He didn't want those free handouts. What's also interesting about that is he was being excluded in certain areas in Canada from getting those handouts because people like David Eby are absolutely insane.
Having said that, if this is rescinded, Catherine, it will just join now a list of these Trudeau-era policies that the Carney government, the new Liberal government, has rescinded. So we're waiting to see if that in fact happened.
So Mark Carney back to another hole with this one. What's he going to do? We all know that this 2035 mandate for EVs is absolutely stupid because our grid can't support the cars. Our electrical grid cannot charge all these cars. We can't have 40 million Canadians or whatever, maybe 20 million Canadians with EVs all plug in their cars all within the same couple hours after work. It's not going to happen. We don't have the grid. So this can't happen. We don't have enough chargers. It just can't happen. The EV mandate goes directly to Carney's climate agenda as per his book. That costs to travel anywhere via car or plane will cost everyone more money. They put a tax on travel. It's inevitable. Don't worry, if you want to travel, you can just pay for some carbon credits. And don't worry, Brookfield sells that. This is quite something here. So Jaguar, their sales have dropped 97% in Europe after their rebrand and going fully electric. It says right here, they only sold 49 Jaguar vehicles in April 2025, which is a 97.5% drop, down from 1,961 units in the same month last year. So they switched to fully electric and they basically lost their entire customer base. If Jaguar execs had been paying attention, they would have known that it is bureaucrats who have been demanding EVs, not customers. There it is.